Well, after David Buss's talk this morning on what makes men attractive, I couldn't resist putting on this little film.
Here, it seems to me, lies the best answer to those narrow-minded people who are always carping on about the use of science. The founder of these Christmas lectures, Michael Faraday, was once asked by the then Prime Minister, Sir Robert Peel, what was the use of science? Sir Faraday replied, "What is the use of a baby?" What's your name? She says her name's Hannah. Faraday said, "What is the use of a baby?" And I've always thought that what he meant by that must be that a baby has such potential. It may not be able to do very much now, but it will be able to do a lot. But it's also possible that what Faraday meant was that there's no point in bringing a baby into the world if all that it's going to do is work to go on living and work to go on living again. If that's all the point of life, then what are we here for? There's got to be more to it than that. Thank you very much.
The 21st century ought to be a golden age, the golden age of science and reason. Thanks to science, we know the age of the universe, between 13 and 14 billion years. We understand why we exist. We understand how the laws of physics, without ever once being violated, working through the astonishing process discovered by Charles Darwin, gives rise, given enough time, to the complexity of life, the diversity, the elegant beauty of life, the overpoweringly compelling illusion of design. Given enough time is important, and thanks to science, we do know the age of the Earth and solar system, about 4.5 billion years. We understand the laws that govern the movement of large objects, from galaxies to sand grains. You appreciate that even a sand grain is a large object, obeying the laws of large objects, as opposed to the quantum mechanical laws of small objects. We may not fully understand the laws governing small objects, but we know a lot about what those laws are, and experimental scientists have verified them to an accuracy so great that it's equivalent to measuring the width of North America within one hair's breadth. Multinational enterprise has built gigantic research instruments such as the Large Hadron Collider. At this point, I'm reminded that in my latest book, The Greatest Show on Earth, there was a rather nice misprint. I was waxing, I hope, poetic about the Large Hadron Collider, and unfortunately it came out as the Large Hard-On Collider. Unfortunately, the publisher's proofreader spotted it and removed the misprint. I begged her to leave it in, but she insisted that it was more than her job was worth. We put together great communal enterprises to launch spacecraft to put men on the moon, explore the outer solar system. We've launched telescopes into space to probe the farthest reaches of the universe and look back in time to witness what was going on soon after the origin of everything. In the field of medical science, we've conquered polio, smallpox, the diseases of childhood. We have skilled surgeons operating with anesthetics, where our forefathers would saw off a leg with nothing more sedative than brandy. And it's probably true to say that many of us in this room would not be here but for modern antibiotics, vaccines, and surgery. We've deciphered the machine code of life and have read the genetic book of humanity and dozens of other species of animals and plants. Yes, this ought to be a golden age, an age to put all previous centuries in the shade. And yet, in many countries, including the United States, politicians cannot be elected unless they pretend obeisance to primitive superstitions that haven't changed since the Dark Ages. Huge areas of the world are in thrall to a dark desert religion which teaches that every word of its holy book is literally true, even when it collides with scientific evidence. Devotees of that same religion are intoxicated with their childhood indoctrination so much that they're prepared to turn themselves into human bombs for its sake. Our newspapers are filled with astrological predictions for whose validity not a shred of evidence exists, not a scrap of theory supports. Our pharmacies are filled with homeopathic and other quack remedies, which again lack either evidence or theoretical underpinning. Our laws are riddled with outdated values that have no basis in anything but medieval superstition. Our children in many countries are taught manifest rubbish, and our science teachers are intimidated and prevented from teaching the central and fundamental basis of their subject. Things may be better in Mexico, but in the United States, polls show that more than 40% of the American people think the world is only 6,000 years old. I just mentioned the width of North America in connection with quantum theory's predictions. If you believe the world is only 6,000 years old, given that the true age is 4.5, 4.6 billion, it's equivalent to believing that the width of North America is around 8 meters. Yet these are not bad people. These are people who believe they're righteous. They believe they're doing what their God wants them to do. They believe they're going to paradise because of what they do. As the physicist Steven Weinberg said, with or without religion, you would have good people doing good things and evil people doing evil things. But for good people to do evil things, that takes religion. Douglas Adams, one of my favorite authors, shortly before his death, made a wonderful impromptu speech in Cambridge, and it was recorded, and I'm going to read a little bit of it here. The invention of the scientific method is, I'm sure we'll all agree, the most powerful intellectual idea, the most powerful framework for thinking and investigating and understanding and challenging the world around us that there is. And it rests on the premise that any idea is there to be attacked. If it withstands the attack, then it lives to fight another day. And if it doesn't withstand the attack, then down it goes. Religion doesn't seem to work like that. It has certain ideas at the heart of it which we call sacred or holy. What it means is, here is an idea or a notion that you're not allowed to say anything bad about. You're just not. Why not? Because you're not. If somebody votes for a party that you don't agree with, you're free to argue about it as much as you like. Everybody will have an argument, but nobody feels aggrieved by it. If somebody thinks taxes should go up or down, you're free to have an argument about it. But on the other hand, if somebody says, I mustn't move a light switch on a Saturday, you say, I respect that. Why should it be that it's perfectly legitimate to support the Labour Party or Conservative Party, Republicans or Democrats, this model of economics versus that, Macintosh instead of Windows? But to have an opinion about how the universe began, about who created the universe, no, that's holy. What does that mean? Why do we ring-fence that for any other reason other than that we've just got used to doing so? There's no other reason at all. It's just one of those things that crept into being. And once that loop gets going, it's very, very powerful. So we're used to not challenging religious ideas. But it's very interesting how much of a furore Richard creates when he does it. Everybody gets absolutely frantic about it, because you're not allowed to say these things. Yet when you look at it rationally, there is no reason why those ideas shouldn't be as open to debate as any other, except that we have agreed somehow between us that they shouldn't be. And that was Douglas Adams. I want to illustrate the difference between the religious and the scientific way of approaching the truth. The Quarterly Review of Biology is a standard journal of biology, one that I often read, and I'm going to imagine that I'm editing a special issue of the Quarterly Review on the question, did an asteroid kill the dinosaurs? And the first paper in my edited volume is called iridium layer at KT boundary and potassium-argon dated crater in Yucatan indicate that an asteroid killed the dinosaurs. That's the kind of paper you'd expect to see in a scientific journal. It's based on evidence, you can read it, you can evaluate the evidence. But now suppose that we had the following paper. The President of the Royal Society has been vouchsafed a strong inner conviction that an asteroid killed the dinosaurs. What would you think about that in a scientific paper? Or, it has been privately revealed to Professor Huxtane that an asteroid killed the dinosaurs. Professor Haldley was brought up to have total and unquestioning faith that an asteroid killed the dinosaurs. Professor Hawkins has promulgated an official dogma binding on all loyal Hawkinsians that an asteroid killed the dinosaurs. That's the way these people think. And many of us buy into it. You've probably seen maps of the world that show where various languages are spoken or where various religions predominate. And I've turned that into a statement, a couple of statements. In the area indicated, people tend to believe that the wine in the Holy Communion symbolizes the blood of Jesus, whereas in the other place I've indicated, the bottom left, they believe that the wine becomes the blood. Top right, where it's indicated by the arrow, the people there believe there are hundreds of gods, and in the other final place, they believe that Allah is the only God. That has its consequences. Suppose science worked like that. Suppose you could color in a map of the world according to where people believe different theories about what killed the dinosaurs. A comet killed the dinosaurs in North America, let's say. The mammals outclassed the dinosaurs in South America. In India, global warming killed the dinosaurs. And in Afghanistan, a virus killed the dinosaurs. That's not the way science works. And if it did, we would laugh at it. And yet we're all perfectly prepared to accept the idea that in particular parts of the world, the majority of the population believe something different, something incompatible with what is believed in other parts of the world. Salman Rushdie has had a large part of his life ruined by a fatwa from that disagreeable old man at the top right. Suppose science worked like that. Once again, you laugh at that. And yet, given that it's religion, following that statement by Douglas Adams that I read out, we kind of all accept that it's sort of reasonable, it's sort of right that religion should behave like that. Why are we enthralled to this preposterous subversion of the human mind? How do we know what's true? I've written down 5 answers to that question, and only the last one has any respectability whatever. There's tradition. That's a lousy reason for believing anything. Authority, that is too. Revelation, that's worse. And faith, that may be the worst of all. The only good reason for believing anything is evidence. Religion warps the mind. Otherwise intelligent people believe preposterous things that would get them put away in lunatic asylums if they were the only ones to believe it. Jesus turned water into wine. There are many people in the world who seriously believe that. You're not allowed to press a button on an elevator on the Sabbath, but you are allowed to ride an automatic elevator. Muhammad rode to heaven on a winged horse. Jesus' mother was a virgin. There are people who believe that. It's equivalent to an individual believing, I am Napoleon. And if an individual believes, I am Napoleon, you regard him as a lunatic. But if millions of people believe something equally silly, we treat it with respect. exaggerated respect. These things are just made up. Somebody made them up, often a very long time ago, and the longer ago it was made up, some people believe that somehow gives it a sort of sanctity, a sort of respectability. But when something is made up, the fact that it was made up centuries ago doesn't make it any more true today. Pope John Paul II, I'm going to read now a section from my book, The God Delusion. Pope John Paul II created more saints than all his predecessors of the past several centuries put together. And he had a special affinity with the Virgin Mary. His polytheistic hankerings were dramatically demonstrated in 1981 when he suffered an assassination attempt in Rome and attributed his survival to intervention by Our Lady of Fatima. Quote, "A maternal hand guided the bullet." One cannot help wondering why she didn't guide it to miss him altogether. Others might think the team of surgeons who operated on him for 6 hours deserve at least a share of the credit. But perhaps their hands too were maternally guided. The relevant point is that it wasn't just Our Lady who, in the Pope's opinion, guided the bullet, but specifically Our Lady of Fatima. Presumably Our Lady of Lourdes, Our Lady of Guadalupe, Our Lady of Medjugorje, Our Lady of Akita, Our Lady of Zaitun, Our Lady of Garabandal, and Our Lady of Nok were busy on other errands at the time. Now, people often say, well, you may not believe in God at an intellectual level, but surely don't we need God in order to be good? How would we know what's right and what's wrong without God? I'm going to try playing now a little quote. Do we get our morals from the Bible? And there's a nice little episode from The West Wing, that rather magnificent American political drama, which I hope will answer the question. I hope the sound comes through all right.
I like how you call homosexuality an abomination.
I don't say homosexuality is an abomination, Mr. President. The Bible does.
Yes, it does. Leviticus
18:22.
chapter and verse. I wanted to ask you a couple of questions while I had you here. I'm interested in selling my youngest daughter into slavery as sanctioned in Exodus 21:7. She's a Georgetown sophomore, speaks fluent Italian, always cleared the table when it was her turn. What would a good price for her be? While thinking about that, can I ask another? My chief of staff, Leo McGarry, insists on working on the Sabbath. Exodus 35:2 clearly says he should be put to death. Am I morally obligated to kill him myself, or is it okay to call the police? Here's one that's really important, because we've got a lot of sports fans in this town. Touching the skin of a dead pig makes one unclean, Leviticus 11:7. If they promise to wear gloves, can the Washington Redskins still play football? Can Notre Dame? Can West Point? Does the whole town really have to be together to stone my brother John for planting different crops side by side? Can I burn my mother in a small family gathering for wearing garments made from 2 different threads? Think about those questions, would you?
We do not, as a matter of fact, of course, as a matter of fact, get our morals from the Bible. We get them from wherever we get them from in the 20th century, which has nothing to do with religion. And other people at this conference have talked about that. I've got very little time, so I won't do that. So we certainly do not get our morals from the Bible, and I damn well hope we don't. Alternatively, are we good only because we are afraid God is watching us, afraid of the great video camera in the sky recording our every move, even our every thought? If that's the case, what a contemptible reason to be good. I don't believe in God. I hope I'm a good person. And I'm not a good person because I'm afraid of being found out by some celestial spy. I hope I'm good for a better reason than that, and I hope you are too. The threat of hell is a great psychological crime, especially against children. Children who are brought up to believe that if they're bad, they will roast forever in an eternal torment. What could be a worse form of mental child abuse than that? I put up a quote there from Thomas Aquinas, which you may find charming. That the saints may enjoy their beatitude and the grace of God more abundantly, they are permitted to see the punishment of the damned in hell. Where do I come from? Science today is in a position to answer this deepest and most tantalizing of all questions. We have it within our grasp to understand the nature of the universe, why the world is here, why the universe is here, why life is here, why we are the way we are. What a beautiful thing, what a beautiful gift to give a child, to give a young adult, this understanding of the nature of existence. I'm going to end by reading the opening words of my book, Unweaving the Rainbow. We are going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. Most people are never going to die because they're never going to be born. The potential people who could have been here in my place, but who will in fact never see the light of day, outnumber the sand grains of Sahara. Certainly those unborn ghosts include greater poets than Keats, scientists greater than Newton. We know this because the set of possible people allowed by our DNA so massively outnumbers the set of actual people. In the teeth of these stupefying odds, it is you and I, in our ordinariness, that are here. Here's another respect in which we're lucky. The universe is older than 100 million centuries. Within a comparable time, the sun will swell to a red giant and engulf the earth. Every century of hundreds of millions has been in its time, or will be when its time comes, the present century. The present moves from the past to the future like a tiny spotlight, inching its way along a gigantic ruler of time. Everything behind the spotlight is in darkness, the darkness of the dead past. Everything ahead of the spotlight is in the darkness of the unknown future. The odds of your centuries being the one in the spotlight are the same as the odds that a penny tossed down at random will land on a particular ant crawling somewhere along the road from New York to San Francisco. I am lucky to be alive, and so are you. Privileged, and not just privileged to enjoy our planet. More, we are granted the opportunity to understand why our eyes are open and why they see what they do in the short time before they close forever. Thank you very much.